Education Division of North Sales, and we're going to talk about sailboat racing. And to our way of thinking, racing success is built on a pyramid of boat handling, boat speed, and tactics. You have to sail your boat well before you can race it well. You have to be fast to win races. Doesn't matter what you're racing, bicycles, bobsleds, running, skiing, sailing. Speed wins races. You have to be fast. And then tactics is the last piece at the top of the pyramid. Often, if you think you have a tactical problem, in fact, it's often the base of your pyramid crumbling out from beneath your tactics. You can have good ideas poorly executed, and when in fact you think it's bad ideas, but really it's just the execution to make the tactics work. So boat speed and boat handling and boat speed. So we will, over the next couple of days, work our way up the pyramid a couple of times. We'll start with some drills on boat handling tomorrow and boat speed, and then we'll go into tactics and starts and wind shifts and stuff like that. And we'll do that through the day tomorrow, and then we'll kind of do revisit that again on Sunday and run back up that same trail. So boat speed's going to be a focus of some of our discussion this evening. We're also going to look at some boat handling stuff. As you go along, successful, there's not going to be, and there's no magic secret thing that I'm going to be able to tell you, because if there is some magic thing, I don't know what it is. From my observation, I have watched so much sailboat racing that I probably watch more than I actually do it. And what I can tell you is that the people who are winning are just doing the fundamentals really well consistently. There's no magic. It's just doing the basic fundamental stuff really well all the time. Tacking well, accelerating well, sailing fast, never slowing down. The spinnaker goes up at the windward mark. It comes down before they get to the leeward mark. It flies through the jibes. They're always fast. They're hiking out. They look for good wind and have good tactics, but it's good boat speed and good boat handling that builds it up. So it's just a lot of fundamentals. The difference between fast and slow, as we talk about boat speed, we're not going to go 20% faster. We're just going to go a couple of percent faster. That's the difference between good boat speed and great boat speed, is just 2%. We're going to try and go from 5 knots to 5.1. That's 2%. We're going to do some math now. 5, right? 1% of 5 is 0.05, right? So when I do these numbers, you got to check them, make sure. So 0.05, 2 times 0.05 is 0.1, right? So far, so good? So 5 to 5.1, can you feel that on your way? Hardly. But that's the difference between good speed and great speed, is just 2%. And it's going to turn out that that 2% is 10 things that are each worth 1/10 of 2%. You'll hardly notice them, but they're all the little things that add up. Starting from having your boat well prepared, the gear works right, the bottom's clean, the sails are good, the rig is tuned. We'll talk a little about rig tuning at some point through the weekend. And then getting out occasionally to practice so that your boat handling is good, so that then you can pick your head up and look around and do tactics. So onward from there. But we're not going to go light years faster. Well, light years not a measure of speed, is it? It's a distance. But you can never go light years faster. It's a distance. So we're just going to go a little faster all the time and try to never slow down. And we'll take a look briefly at a little bit of theory, but before we get into sail trim theory, we're actually going to, because that's the middle of the pyramid, we're going to jump into a little bit of boat handling and some tacking. And we'll start with this one. So this is a boat that would be familiar to at least some of you. What kind of boat is this? Who's got one of these? Yeah, somebody here's got it racing one of these. This is a Colgate 26. The difference between this Colgate 26 and the one that you're sailing is that this one's being sailed in water that is about 23 degrees. Yeah. That's the biggest difference. What's the water temperature out here right now?
You don't want to know.
Yeah, I don't want to know. Sorry, I didn't mean to ask.
Shower inside.
All right. So this is a tack. This is just on boat handling, good tacking. You're going to tack a bunch of times every race. You can be just a little quicker in each tack. A few things to note about this tack. One is that the crew have not moved. Right? The boat turns, and the boat leads, and the crew follow when you tack. A nice smooth turn, and then as the boat comes through the tack, the crew all move across at once and flatten coming out. So that's at the end of the tack that you move. And also to a nice exit angle coming out of the tack. Neither underpowered nor overpowered, neither too deep nor too high coming out of the tack. Just a nice smooth turn to a good exit angle. We say, what do we say when we tack? You say ready about, and then what? What do you say? I don't know, in these parts, helm's over? Right. Did anybody ever say hard a lee? Right, hard a lee? They always used to, that's what I learned to sail was hard a lee. That's really not correct. Ready about, smooth a lee. Right, just a nice smooth turn. If you wanted to stop your boat quickly, how could you do it? Turn really hard. Have anyone done a quick stop man overboard rescue? What's the first thing you do in that? You slam the helm over to stop the boat. If you want to stop your boat when you're tacking, slam the helm over. There are actually occasions, sometimes setting up for a start, when you actually want to turn and park, and that's the correct thing, is to actually slam the helm over and stop the boat. Often during races, that's not tactically advantageous. If you want to carry speed, a nice smooth turn, particularly in the initial part of the turn, you make a nice smooth turn into the wind. The boat's going almost full speed, almost straight upwind at the beginning of the tack. Don't fight that. A little quicker turn through the middle of the tack, and as the sails change sides and start to fill, you can stop your turn, and the sails will finish the turn for you. That'll keep you from oversteering out of the tack and settle the boat right down. In the meantime, you use your weight to help steer the boat through the turn. How's the driver's stance look here? Does this look like a comfortable way to drive? Not at all. So we got the three galoots in the front of the boat sitting still, and the driver moving around trying to balance the boat's weight. When the boat is properly trimmed and set up, the driver will be able to sit at the helm comfortably, hold the tiller with a light touch, and feel the rudder follow the boat upwind as good trim and good crew weight placement steers the boat balanced and fast upwind. If your boat is difficult to steer upwind, it's out of trim. And if the boat needs crew weight movement, that's the responsibility of someone other than the driver. The exception to that being a single-handed boat. Once you have two people on board, the crew are moving to balance the boat and keep the helm balanced and trimming sails. And then the driver can sit more comfortably. This driver, she should be not sitting like that. She'll show us a better technique soon. The best sailor in the world, actually, arguably. A world champion in catamarans, windsurfers, dinghies, and big boats. So here's a little better helm grip. We finally taught her how to drive. Right? The big guys are moving around. She's got a nice microphone grip on the helm, which is one good way to do it, sitting comfortably, and the helm is balanced and neutral. Just a little bit of helm movement, but really just inches of helm. Here's another tack, nice smooth turn. Crew wait to roll the boat, and then everyone moving up as needed to finish the tack and level the boat coming out of the tack. And right to a good exit angle with trim. Coming out of the tack, often you need to ease just an inch or two of trim compared to your full close haul trim. As you come out of the tack, you'll be a little slow. And then as you accelerate to full speed, you just do the last inch or two. Not 6 inches, but just an inch or two of trim ease, and then accelerate back to full speed. And as you accelerate, you do the last bit of trim. All right, well, we'll peek on to another video, because that's as much time as we have for that. We've got so much to do in only 2 days. So this is specific to Melges 24s and light air tacking in a Melges 24. Some videos that were created this past January. And nice drone view, roll tack, and then the crew pop up at the end of the tack all at once and level the boat out. A nice exit angle and good trim through that. We'll watch a couple more of these at slow speed and then some at fuller speed, just to get the full pace. This is still a little slow motion, and then that's a little full speed. Crew up. One, two, three, whoosh. If you can coordinate it so that the crew all move across the boat together at the end of the tack and pop up all at once, you kind of flatten the boat from a little bit of heel out of the tack to flattening all in one motion, and that accelerates the flow of air across the sails. It helps the boat accelerate out of the tack. So you want no hurry tacking. In fact, some drivers don't say ready about or anything. The crew are hiking out. They just put the helm down so people don't move early. Their feet get wet, and then they scurry up to the other side, and that's one approach. You can you'll have the same crew for at least through the end of that day, and then and then that'll be the end of it. But there's no hurry. It's a smooth turn, and the crew follow the boat through the tack. So you can sail a Melges. How many crew on a Melges 24? What's the crew weight limit? 830? 827? It's in kilos, huh? Rounded to, yeah, okay. 827 pounds. 300, yeah, it's an even round number in kilos. And everybody, shows up just a little. So that's 4 or 5. All right, onward to a little bit on sail trim. And I'm going to try and watch my time here because we've got, we're good. We're good. So far, so good. Yeah. Tacking, upwind trim.
So when you're done, would you post this so we can get a link to all of this?
Some of this stuff is already posted, and other stuff we'll be putting up, and some of it's still in production. In fact, this one's past due. Yeah, this is a work in progress. So it wasn't that long ago that sailboats could not go upwind very efficiently. It's a relatively recent development that we can sail against the force that drives us. And it's because of advances in rig design, fore and aft sails, and also particularly on underwater keel and centerboard design that now we can sail against the force that drives us. And it's a pretty marginal thing, but it does work. There's a lot of heeling force and a little bit of forward force. And that forward force combined with the heeling force creates pressure on the keel or the centerboard. And it's actually the keel lift that takes the boat upwind. So we're going to do very brief coverage of theory. if you want lots of detail in theory, you can get Tom Whidden's new edition of The Art and Science of Sales, and you'll learn more about theory than you'd ever could understand. It is a really good book, and goes into a lot of interesting detail. So here's a couple of things to appreciate about your sails and your trim. One is that the jib and main work together as a single foil. You can think of them not as independent operators, but as all pieces of one puzzle. And the air bends forward for the jib and puts the jib in a relative lift as it approaches the sailplane. The air actually bends forward, the upwash prior to getting to the boat, and that puts the jib in a relative lift. And then the air flowing off the back of the jib or off the leech of the jib, that helps to bend the air around the back of the main so the air stays attached to the back of the main, and we can trim the main harder than we otherwise would be able to without stalling the main. When you don't have a jib, you can't trim a cat-rigged mainsail nearly as hard as a sloop-rigged main. So the two sails work together to be much more efficient than a single sail would be alone, even a much bigger single sail. So one takeaway from that is that the jib and main should be trimmed in matching shapes. As we make an adjustment and change the shape in the jib, a corresponding adjustment in the main, or vice versa. And if you ask the trimmers, if you ask the jib trimmer, they'll say that's absolutely true. The main should be trimmed just to match my jib shape. I lead the boat upwind. And the mainsail trimmer would say, yes, the sail should be in matched shapes. That little jib should match my big mainsail shape. And the helmsman will mediate and decide it's actually the foredeck's fault after all. Yeah. So it's not the sails that take us upwind, but it's actually the keel that takes us upwind. And sail lift pushes the boat ahead and to leeward. There's heeling force and forward force. And those combine to create a lot of heeling force, a little bit of forward force. And then we take that and we go upwind. That forward force, the heeling force of the forward and leeward force off the sails, that yellow sail lift, creates an unbalanced load or an angle of attack on the keel. So even though your keel is symmetric, the loads on the keel are asymmetric. And that creates a long side and a short side around the keel. And that in turn is why the keel generates lift. Right? Your keel is pretty much symmetric. Should be in your centerboard. But the loads on the keel are asymmetric. Sometimes you'll hear a sailboat described as being like an airplane with one wing in the water and one wing in the air. And that's a gross simplification and underestimates the marvel of a sailboat. Because on an airplane, the wings don't provide the thrust, they just provide the lift. And they're lifted in the same way. On a sailboat, the sails provide the lift and the thrust, and the keel and the sails are actually somewhat in opposition, and it's the combined forces all together that makes the boat go forward with just some little bit of leeway. It's a pretty tricky, it's a much trickier thing than an airplane, and thank goodness, because we are allowed to fail, and they are not, right? Which is actually a little, yeah, anyway. So one thing about that is, as a sail trimmer, our programs, we would like to believe we provide you with a great theoretical framework to become a great sail trimmer. And that's the starting point, that theoretical framework, and then you actually go sailing and try stuff. And with experience, you'll be quicker at trying and testing things. But one thing you can bring, no matter what your level of experience, is just persistence. You can always go faster. There's very little you can do in sail trim that you can't undo. Try stuff. Trim a little harder. Ease out a little bit. From the starting point of mainsail trim, and we trim with the top batten parallel to the boom and the top telltale flowing most of the time. That's where we start. That's not where we end. That's where we start. And then we experiment. Trim harder than that. Ease out a little bit from that. Trim the jib and the main both a little harder. Put the bow down a little deeper. Sail the boat a little bit higher. Try a little more heel. Try sailing the boat flatter. Try sailing the boat flatter. Don't heel so much. More boats are heeled too much than too little, roughly. So try sailing the boat flatter. What's it going to feel like when you sail the boat really flat? What's the helm going to feel like? It's going to feel kind of slow because there's going to be no load in the helm. But that's often very fast. So just experiment with stuff. You can try. There's not very little you can do that you can't undo. And this weekend, we're not keeping score. So try stuff. We're not keeping score, are we?
Definitely not. I'm trying to.
All right. We're going to take a brief look at sail power and sail shape, and then we'll do a brief bit on some other stuff as well. Oh, yeah, we're good. So we're trying to sail the boat at full power. Underpowered is slow. Overpowered is slow also. We want to get the boat to full power. If the air is light, you can't ever get to full power, but we can extract all the power we can. The power that we have comes from three sources. There's angle of attack, sail depth, and twist. Those are the three sources of sail power. And we'll look later at the sail controls we use to create those sail shapes. But not all boats have the same set of controls. But in the end, all sails get their power from angle of attack, depth, and twist. So we're going to look briefly at those sources of power. Then we'll look also briefly now and then in more detail on the water tomorrow at the sail controls we use to create those shapes. So these are the three sources of power. We'll define those a little bit. Angle of attack first. Angle of attack is 0, and there's no power when the sail is luffing. As we trim in, angle of attack increases and power increases. You also can change angle of attack at the helm. When you bear off, you increase angle of attack, and when you head up, you reduce angle of attack. So those are the same source of power, angle of attack. It's controlled two different ways. You can trim in to increase angle of attack or bear off to increase angle of attack. Right? When you're sailing along and you feel a little slow, you put the bow down and add power. When you head up, when you're heeled too much and you feather the boat up to reduce power, you're changing angle of attack. So that's our first source of sail power. As you increase angle of attack, power increases up to the point where airflow stalls, and then power drops precipitously. So when you want maximizing power, you go right to the edge, but not over the edge. So that's our first source of power, angle of attack. Second source of power is sail depth. A deeper sail shape is a more powerful shape, and a flatter shape has less power and a little less drag. So we add depth to increase power, and as with angle of attack, more depth adds power up to a point, and when the sail stalls, then power drops. How do we know when a sail has stalled? Right, so when it's luffing, there's no angle of attack. And then we trim in and it gets full, and then if we over trim, what happens? You slow down and the telltales stall. The outside telltales on the jib, or the leech telltales in the main, or if you have a leech telltale in your jib, a non-overlapping jib should have a leech telltale about 2/3 to 3/4 of the way up the leech, or maybe even 2 if it's in the budget. When your telltales stall, then you're stalled. So luffing is the being underpowered, and then when you stall, that's when you've gone over the edge in power. So here's a deep sail shape on the left, and then on the right, too deep, and the sail is stalled. And we know that's a stall because the telltales have stalled. They've disappeared. Twist is our third source of sail power. adding twist actually reduces sail power. So when you twist the sail open, spill the sail at the top, you reduce power. When you reduce twist, you increase power. So on the left, we have more twist and less power. In the middle, a moderate amount of twist. And on the right, almost no twist, and that's going to be stalled. As with depth and angle of attack, when you have too little twist and stall the flow, it's like falling off a cliff. You lose power. So you want to go to the edge, look over the edge, but don't go off the cliff.
When you say it's stalled,
Mm-hmm.
and there's not enough twist, do you mean mostly at the top of the sail or the whole sail?
You can stall the top part and even have the top stalled, and the lower portion might still be working. So you can stall you might stall just the top telltale or halfway down the sail. It's pretty, but you can stall the entire thing. If you trim close hauled and turn to a beam reach, you can stall it all the way down. But generally it spreads from the top down. And we'll take a look actually a little more about twist because twist is a very powerful way to control power and heel. So on the left here, more twist, telltale slowing. In the middle, less twist, we trim in, and then we over trim and stall the telltale. All sails have some twist. And that is designed into sails and trimmed into sails because the wind is twisted. The wind we trim to. There's wind gradient, and that creates a need for twist. So this is our wind triangle. You start with the wind speed, and lost my. How'd they get there? So here's our wind triangle, as I was saying. Here's the wind. The wind down low is lighter than the wind aloft. There's more wind up high. We say the wind is stronger up high, but really it's lighter down low. Just we happen to be down here, so we reference the bottom. In any event, this is our wind, our apparent wind triangle is the combination of wind. Yeah, well, I'll just not stop it this time. Combination of the wind and our boat speed creates the wind triangle. And so here's our apparent wind triangle, apparent wind down low. If we take that apparent wind and move it up, that's the wind from below. And with stronger true wind aloft, it creates a wider apparent wind angle. So that stronger wind up high and the same boat speed up high, right? You'll grant me that the boat speed up high is going to be, at least on average, about the same as the boat speed at the deck, right? If it's not, then we're going to have other issues, right? Never mind twist. We're going to have something else to worry about. Yeah. Yeah, we really don't want, yeah. If the rig breaks, right, it's a long, how long is sailing season here in Kelowna?
10 months.
Yeah, 10 months. 2 months or 10 months, yeah. You know, there's no such thing as bad weather. There's just bad clothing. That's what skiers and sailors have in common, right? So, so the boat speed's the same. If the boat speed's not the same, then the rig, yeah. And then, now, if your house were to burn down, you could go sail the boat and live on the boat for the summer. That'd be not a problem. They rebuild the house. But if the boat's damaged for the season, you're going to have to go home and like mow the lawn and stuff. Really don't want that. So we're going to keep the boat speed the same up high as down low. But the wind, the apparent wind angle will be different up high because of wind gradient. And particularly in light air, you have more wind gradient. The wind is relatively stronger up high than it is down low. And so you have to have sails trimmed with quite a bit of twist in light air to match the wind gradient. In moderate wind, you can trim harder. There's relatively less wind gradient, and you can trim harder without stalling. And then in heavy air, we add twist again, not because of wind gradient. Why would we add twist in heavy air? To depower. So what's the advantage of using twist to depower in heavy air?
Keep your sail shape.
Right. What does power up high do that power down low doesn't do so much? Heels the boat over. Right? So in heavy air, we'll work hard to reduce power aloft and maintain the power down low where it has less heeling leverage. Whereas in lighter air, the wind is stronger up high, and to take advantage of that extra wind aloft, we'll add as much power as we can in the top of the rig to take advantage of that fresher breeze. So a lot of our trim attention is devoted to the upper part of the rig, either adding power in light air or spilling power in heavy air to suit the conditions, using that extra wind to advantage in light air and spilling the excess power to reduce heeling forces in heavy air. And then in moderate wind, we actually sail with the least twist and can point the highest by trimming hard. We're going to look at sail controls and different sail trim techniques on Sunday morning, because we don't really have time today for all of that. We're going to do a brief discussion on starting tactics, and then we're going to take a short break. And we're going to use Carrie's committee boat and her wind, too. And this is the wind on the ocean. And this is the mountain wind. One of those will be the wind at any given moment. You just never really know. I just moved all the marks. So we're not going to set that many marks here. Some of our clinics, we set slalom courses and all sorts of stuff. When you're in 12 feet of water, there's a lot of fun things you can do with lots of marks. This is not one of those places. On the other hand, I've been warned here. We tried to set marks with 150 feet of line on Carter Lake in Colorado, 150 feet of a road on the anchor line, which is a lot of line to drop down and even more to pull up, and really disappointing because it was 180 feet deep. And the marks did not set as well as one would have hoped. So here, we've chatted with Kent, and we have gotten squared away on where we can set marks and where we can. And John and Tom, we're going to get the marks squared away. So we're going to spend some time, lots of time, on starts. Starts are the most exciting moment in all of sports. Not just the most exciting part of a sailboat race, but the most exciting moment in all of sports. Most races, they organize that. What are they? Kentucky Derby. Is that tomorrow? I think. I don't know. They put the horses in a gate and turn them loose. In a car race, they spend a week practicing and taking time trials to figure out the order they're going to start in. In a running race, they line them up in lanes and set them up. In a sailboat race, they say, starts at noon. Good luck, right? So we have to create some order out of the chaos that is a sailboat racing start. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to work backwards in our discussion. Where do you want to be after the start? You want to be on the line, at full speed, at the gun. And actually, that's not the end of the story. what you really want to do is you want to be in the front row going full speed a minute after the start. That's when the start ends. You hit the starting line and you're halfway through the start. The other half of the start is being able to hold your lane and keep clear air and keep full speed for the minute after the start when the boats are rail to rail or nearly so. Because if you fall out the back and get forced to tack away or sail in bad air, that's not bad tactics. That's not being able to hold your lane and sail trim. So this is where we want to be a minute after the start. And to do that, we want it to be here on the line at full speed at the gun. Anywhere on the line? Sometimes there's a favored end. If after the start you want it to go to the right-hand side of the course, which end of the line should you start at? The right-hand end. If you wanted to go left after the start, where would you start? Start to the left. Why would you want to go right or go left? Well, here, what shore are we on? Are we on the eastern shore or the western shore? We're on the eastern shore. The eastern shore is generally breezier than the western shore, right? Everybody knows that. Yeah. I've got local knowledge now. So if the wind is out of the north, often you'd want to start and go right after the start to get in towards that shore. What else would determine where on the line to start? If one end of the line was upwind of the other end, closer to the windward mark in sailing distance, further upwind, if we had just one of these winds to work with, and this end was further upwind, then it would be closer in sailing distance to the windward mark. So if the starting line is perpendicular to the wind, if this starting line is perpendicular to the wind, and line C is perpendicular, there's no advantage to one end or the other. If line D, on line D, which end is favored? Right? The pin end, the buoy end. Pin, buoy, leeward end. All mean the same thing. Pin end. And on line B, which end is favored? The boat end. If this is 10 degrees out of square, one way or the other, how much difference does it make? Is that a big deal? What about 20 degrees? What about 10? How much difference does it make if it's 10 degrees out of square? Lots. Well, that's not really going to, you need to do the math. No, we don't. We're not going to do the math. We're just going to take it for granted. When Bill says it's 25%, we're going to nod and say, oh, that's right. Yeah, there you go. And we'll do the trigonometry another time. And you can look it up in the book. It's 25%. So if it's 10 degrees out of square and the line is 12 boat lengths long, it's 3 boat lengths. 25% for 10 degrees out of square. So that's a pretty big deal. So suppose you wanted to go right, but the pin end was favored. Where should you start? Oh, maybe you start at the pin. Can you tack and get to the right? Sometimes.
Protect the fleet.
Yeah. All right, you port tack the fleet. That might work, and it might not. All right, if you try to port tack the fleet and there's somebody else here who gets a good start, that can be a risky play. But sometimes that'll work, particularly if they're not paying attention. What if the right-hand side of the course was favored and the right-hand end of the line was favored? All right, with line B, where should you start? Start right. Yeah, are you going to be the only one who figures that out? No, everyone's going to be there. All right. If you're the only one who figures it out, check your work. All right. So everyone's going to be there, except you. because you're going to get as close to that pack as you can without getting into that thicket. Do you have to win the start to win the race? No, but a good start really helps. And if you get buried in the crowd, it can make it very hard to win. Do they take intermediate scores? Do you win the starting at an extra point? No, they only take scores at the finish. Get a good start and be in the race. Get as close to the favored end as you can be without getting caught in a crowd, and hit the line at full speed near the favored end, at the gun, going full speed. If you're full speed near the line, near the favored end, then you're in the race. And you can go on from there. How would you set up for that? You have to look ahead and see where the clusters are forming and avoid the crowds. All right, well, so we want to be approaching the line, clear of the crowds, and hit the line at full speed. How do we get to that spot at full speed? All right, we're going to pretend we're an airplane now, not the one with one wing in the water, one in the air, but we're going to taxi to this spot. And then we're going to accelerate from there to full speed at the line, and then we're going to take off. So this is our runway. How long does the runway have to be? Long enough that you can get up to full speed. How long does it take on your boat when you get to this spot, say you come in and tack there, or you're kind of luffing at half speed to get to that spot? How long does it take to get from there to get up to full speed? How much distance do you need? How much time do you need? I have no idea. Depends on the wind, depends on the boat. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to sail past a buoy at half speed. When your bow gets there, you're going to go 3, 2, 1, go, and you're going to start your stopwatch. And you're going to accelerate. When you're at full speed, you're going to look back and say, how far did we sail? How long did it take? And then you'll know, oh, we have to be allowed 20 seconds and 6 boat lengths or 4 boat lengths, or I don't know. I don't know what it's going to be for your boat. But that's what you can test that by just going by a buoy and at half speed and then trim up to full speed. You really don't want to be parked here stopped, because then you'll be vulnerable to attack. All right, so we're going to come here to half speed, go to this spot, and we're going to take that runway and accelerate to full speed in time. That's great, except we're trying to approach that spot, and we're actually the red boat, and there's somebody already on our spot. Well, then we're just going to pick another runway, or go either tack underneath them or go past them. And if you're coming in this way, the same thing. You can go past them, or you can park up earlier. What should you do? Well, be careful of going past, sailing into a pack, or past another boat trying to go to leeward of them. Often it's better just to park up. If you park here, do you want to park right next to them? No, what's important at a start is the space under your bow. You want to leave room under your bow so that you can bear off and accelerate, and then hit the line at full speed and still have room so you're not getting bad air from the other boat. You need a double wide space, ideally. One, use up part of the space to accelerate, and the second part of the space as insurance to come off the line and be able to hold your lane. If you're all the way down in his bad air, then it's hard to hold that lane. So keeping about one boat's width space between you will make a huge difference in being able to hold the lane. If you're less than a boat's width away, then you start to fall right into them. Why does that happen? Magnetism. Actually, what's happening is that the wind is bending. As it comes in here, it bends forward for the leeward boat and aft for the windward boat. It's as though these two boats were a jib and a main, similar to what we saw earlier in the jib and main, how the jib and main work together. This boat becomes the jib, and this boat becomes the main in a pair. And if you're within about a boat length, there's still a little bit of impact. But within half a boat length, it really is pretty hard to hold that position. Really doesn't have, truth is, boat lengths have nothing to do with it. It's the rig dimensions that are the governing factor. It doesn't matter what hull size the rig is on, but we talk about it in boat lengths. I could go on about this, but we're not gonna. You want to get to this spot and accelerate to full speed. How do you get to that spot? You can come in on port tack and tack to that spot. You can come in on starboard at half speed to get to that spot. You can sail away from the line on port broad reach and jibe or tack into that spot. Or you can just get here early and luff. If you sail a laser, you buy this piece of property at 2 minutes, and you sit there and pay your mortgage in sail destruction. Your sail just luffs, and that's expensive. And you just luff your sails and you park there. And a really big fleets of small boats, 100 etchels, you got to buy that spot early. Melges 24 Worlds, their starts will be easy there. Get there early and practice to be able to accelerate in a thin lane. The Melges guys, when you guys go out, are those boats set up to be able to reef? No, too bad, because you really should sail reefed and feel what it's like to be underpowered and figure out how to sail them. Because then it's a huge, that's for sailing around a really crowded starting line, one way to mimic that is to put a reef in your main. And then you can practice like you're sailing in a big fleet start where there's no air. If you have 10 boats practicing that are reefable, you reef them, and you can pretend it's a 60-boat fleet. Write that down. I've never thought of that before. Yeah. So we want to get to this spot, and there are a lot of ways to get there. We will talk about that some more another time, too. We're going to do lots of starts tomorrow. We're going to take a... So here's the question. Here's the question, and here's the answer. The question is, if you're luffing at half speed, you're luffing here at half speed, waiting for time to run down. So there's two questions. One is, how do you know how long it's going to take to get to the line from here? Only you have practice, and you have to look, and you just have to guess. So you have to guess and try it and see. We're going to be doing, when we do our starts, for tomorrow, for the first starting drill, we're going to do 3 starts in a row. You're going to do a start, 5 minutes to watch to figure out how that went. Do another one, 5 minutes to figure out how that went, and the third one's going to be perfect. If you were late on the first one, you should be early on the second one. Not by a boat length, but by half a boat length to a quarter boat length. Stick your bow over the line early if you're late on the first one. How many people have been over early for a start so far this year? Nobody, because we haven't been out sailing this year, right? Yeah. So, if you're 20 seconds from the line with 30 seconds to go, you have to waste 10 seconds. In the vernacular, you have 10 seconds to burn. And you don't want to go charging to the line and then have to do your burn, like slam the brakes on. You want to do your burn as far from the line as you can and leave the runway to accelerate. But if you're too slow here, then you're vulnerable to attack by other boats. A boat could, yes?
I got a question too. When you get, sorry to interrupt, but the question that comes to my mind is when you get the group of boats that you're with to get up to the line way too early. So now they've blocked the wind.
Yeah.
And now you've got to kind of figure out your new runway.
So this is...
At speed instead of fighting with them at the line early.
This is a question, and I'll go back to this other one, but this is a question I don't know the answer to. right? So if you're here's another, if you want to write them down, there's a lot of them. If you're late, what do you do? If you're late, what do you do? I still, if you're still going to be late, I still haven't solved that one. So you want, right? So if your pack is all going to be over early, then I don't know that there's a good solution to that, because being over early as part of the pack isn't any good, but being in their bad air is no good either. What you really need there is a general recall. Because I don't know if you end up stuck. The other way to solve that is to not be caught in that pack, but to be either above or below that crowd, not end up in a crowd. The problem being stuck in a pack of boats is you are vulnerable to the whims and machinations of the gang, of the group. The wisdom, what's that? The wisdom of the masses or something, right? Yeah, well, no, but there's sort of in tech, the wisdom of the masses.
Like global consciousness.
Yeah, crowdsourcing and stuff, right? Well, sometimes that works, but when they're all wrong, that doesn't do you any good. And so you have to get out of that pack. If you are, when you're setting up to start, you want to be at the favored end. You want to be clear to go to the favored side, and you want to stay out of the crowds. The way to make starts work is to not get caught in a pack. Now, if you're sailing in a huge fleet on a small line, sometimes it's just, you can't. But ideally, you try and find a space where you're not stuck in a crowd. So as you set up, I often, one approach that is good for that is to use a port tack approach, not a port tack start, but a port tack approach. You sail up the line, you see where packs of boats are forming, and you either tack under that pack or you go to the far side of that pack. You never tack in the middle of the pack. When you're approaching here, you have to know how much time is left, and you have to know that if you have any doubt about whether you can get to the far side of the pack and still be on time, if there's any doubt about that, you turn back in front of the pack.
You'd be in a position to push them forward.
Yeah, so if you go, well, no, not really. You won't. So if you go through that pack and to the other side, there has to be enough time to get out of there and actually have other boats that you hadn't anticipated kind of expand that pack. So you don't sail under, this is called caught going the wrong way, right? One. And then there's a second, if you read the book, there's son of caught going the wrong way. The sequel, which is when you're coming in this direction and go through and you think you can come up on the other side and push them over early. But in fact, you can't. There are three things that prevent you from pushing these boats up. One is you're in bad air, so you're slow. The second is, as you get here, you have what I call a shallow hook. When you hook somebody, when you get an overlap to leeward, that's called a hook. And before you can push someone up, you need to set a deep hook, get up almost bow to bow, or at least bow to their shrouds, before you can really push up. When you set a shallow hook and try and push, what happens? When they respond, their stern comes down. They really don't have to respond very much, and you can't really push them hard. And plus, the third thing that makes this hard is they're reluctant to respond, as though they don't want to be over early. And so they don't really respond as quickly as the rules would suggest they ought to. And unless there's an umpire there, they get away with it. And just that's how they're going to behave. Don't be surprised. Right? That's the reality. We're not, and so if you get in this little fight, you don't win the start. So you're better off to just sail through that crowd and get to a good spot, or to tack in front of the crowd. Now the danger when you tack, boy, do we have enough time to go to the far side? No, we don't. We're going to have to tack in front of the crowd, and now what? Now if we accelerate, we're going to be early, because we're way early set up here. So you're going really slow, and then you're vulnerable to the next question that came up. What if somebody tries to get behind you and push you up? And the answer to that is try to avoid that in the setup to begin with. When you come in on port and tack here, here, I'll move this all up a little bit so everybody can see a little better. When there's a pack of boats here, and you tack underneath them, first off, don't come in bow to bow and tack, because that puts when you finish tacking, you're easy to hook. You want to end up bow to bow, or even a little bit back. And so you come in low, or you come in at their sterns and then dive before you turn, so you tack and end up bow to their beam. That makes you very hard for anybody to hook. They're going to go into this spot, much better for you than going all the way around you. That gives you a little longer runway, lets you trim 2 seconds sooner and not be over early. The danger of this is if you fall back to here, then you're in bad air. Is this easy? Absolutely not. Is it fascinating and tricky and fun? Yeah, this is what makes sailboat racing, yeah. If it was easy, we would master this, and then we'd have to go golfing. Don't worry, it's never going to happen. So you want to set yourself up when you make this move to not be bow to bow or bow forward, but be bow back. And that makes you less vulnerable. Still,
Risk of getting into bad air.
yes, if you fall back to here, you can fall into bad air. But then you put your bow down. It's always nice. But what if there's another boat down here? This is really tricky. And one of the things that really helps is great boat handling to be able to, how are you going to hold your space here? What if you need to head up a little bit? You heel the boat and trim the main and luff the jib, the boat will come up. Now you get a little close to that, you luff the main, hike out, and trim the jib, pull the bow back down, and then accelerate. And part of it is coordinating and crew work to do that. Part of it having the whole crew kind of understand what the game is, so you don't have to say it and then have it happen. You already know our job here is we're going to come in, we're going to tack, we're going to park, then we're going to hold, then we're going to accelerate. If you have to practice those pieces as a team to get good at it. That's what the guys who are practicing all the time, that's part of what makes them really good, is being able to kind of that slow speed maneuvering and everybody kind of being tuned in to what they're doing. That's how they beat us. Me included. On average, yeah. So on average, most of the boats are in mid-fleet, right? A lot of people would stand up here and talk about what it's like about how to hold the lead and be in front and stuff, because they get to stand in front because they're champions. And they spend a lot of time in the front of fleet. I don't really. In the middle of the fleet's where most of us do most of our sailing. And how to fight back from the middle is actually a more challenging thing than how to hold on from in front. So this is trying to hold this position and leave a little runway. If another boat tries to hook you, if you see another boat coming in to try and hook you, right there, you have, when you see them approaching, you turn down, and not a little bit, you turn down hard, like to a broad reach, not to a close reach, or maybe even broad. How do you turn down? Jib in, main out, and turn down and encourage them to go inside of you. If they still try to hook you, then you have bought yourself some distance down where you can come up hard and luff, and they have a hard time getting to you. It takes really good boat handling to do that. But when you go, match racers, that's what you practice that play. And you can practice that play too, even without match racing. But if you turn down really hard and then come up really hard, it's very hard for them to get to you, and you can recreate a little bit of breathing room. Is this challenging boat handling? Absolutely. Maybe we'll practice this tomorrow. Right? This is the sort of thing that you can practice. Really hard to go out just on race day and practice that. But get out a little early and do that. So get this spot. When you come into tack here, if you're on port tack approach, there's a cluster of boats. Where do you want to tack? You want to tack low and tack in close to them where they can't get to you and where you create a big space under your bow to accelerate. If you're the green boat and you see this boat coming, what do? How do you feel? So the green boat has sort of created this space here, and you come in on the red boat, and you just come in, tack in here, and steal that space. Are you okay with that? No. That's not a friendly sort of thing to do. That's not the Canadian way. That is a New York tactic, and we do not countenance that. You wouldn't. That would be unfriendly. Well, or if you do take it, you have to apologize. But sorry, yeah, sorry. So, I want to thank you all for hosting us and for not building a wall and billing us for it. I'm a little surprised, but yeah. All right. So we're going to tack in here, and when we go to tack, we want to steal the entire space. You don't tack into the middle. You want to steal the entire thing so you have room to put your bow down when you come in between boats. And when you come in on a port tack approach, you have to look. You can't go to the leeward of the leewardmost boat. You kind of sail along, and you look for a gap to tack into. Is there always a gap? Not always, but almost always, because these other boats have tried to create a space, and then you're trying to steal it. Not a friendly thing to do, but there you go. Sorry. So you tack in. You try and carry some speed. Can you luff up the green boat? What's the rule situation here? Port starboard. What's the rule situation here? Still port starboard. What's the rule situation as you cross head to wind? You're tacking until from the time you cross head to wind until when does the tack complete? When you get to a close hauled bearing, close hauled compass course, even with your sails luffing, it's the course, the compass bearing you would sail on, close hauled on starboard, then your tack is complete, then you can luff up. Very common foul to tack into this place, not quite get all the way down, and then start coming back up and luffing. That is illegal. You have to get all the way down to course, tack complete. Even if your sails are luffing, just the course you're on, then you can come up. That's playing by the rules. And then you accelerate from there. I'd like to talk about this, I could go on, but we have tomorrow morning a lot of stuff going on, and now just a few minutes to address that stuff. So at 8:58, we're going to be rigged and ready to go. We're going to have lunches, water, and all set up. And then we're going to go out and do windward leeward loops. And we're going to go out probably by sea buoy, out in the middle. And we'll have another mark set. And we'll tell you if the rendezvous place is going to change. But that's our tentative, that's our plan until we decide otherwise. There'll be another mark set. And it'll be perhaps a quarter mile, a few hundred meters, about 2 minutes of sailing time, roughly, depending on the boat and the wind. And the purpose of this is to work on boat handling. Sail close hauled, call the ley line, get a good ley line, tack, round the windward mark. As you bear away, what do? No rudder. Ease your main, hike out, turn the boat without using your rudder, turn downwind to a broad reach. No spinnaker. This is going to be too short for a spinnaker. Just go wing and wing, and then try to jibe. No rudder. Just all crew weight to windward. Ease the main. If you trim the main in to start the jibe, what does that make the boat do? Head up or fall off? Head up. What are we trying to do? Fall off. Ease your main out to start your jibes. Turn the boat down with weight. And then as the sailboat goes by the lee, the main starts to get soft in the leech, then you can pull it over, and what's it going to try and do? It's going to try and round up, and then you're going to hike out on the other side and roll it back down and accelerate out of the jibe. And then do another jibe, and then round the leeward mark, jibe, head up. How wide do we come in here? We want to be done with the maneuver when we round the mark, close hauled. Right? The mark is the last piece of the turn. So we come in how wide? I don't know. We're going to test. About a boat length wide. When your bow is about a boat length away, you turn up to close hauled so that you're close hauled here. If you're not sure how far that is, here's how you test. You come in right alongside the mark, broad reaching, and you turn up to close hauled, and when you're close hauled, you look and see how far that was. And then the next time you come in that far away. Might be a boat length, might be a boat length and a half. Some boats might be more, but you can test that. All right, so then we're going to just do a few laps of that. Sometimes you'll do one tack and a good ley line call. Sometimes do 3 tacks. Come in on port and tack the mark and roll down. This is a down speed rounding where you tack and bear off. You're a little slow, and it takes really good crew work to get the boat through that turn. And we're just going to do a few laps of that. Every day you go out racing, pretend there's a buoy there, do a few laps of warm-up to kind of get warmed up. Like this is enough sport. You warm up before you compete. So, yes?
So when we do that, you just want that
Well, you want to try and do as you want to steer. You're never going to be able to steer entirely with weight and trim, but mostly. And the idea is to do as much with weight and trim as you can. And the jibes you probably can do. You can probably just hold the tiller extension in the palm of your hand, and the rudder will follow the boat, as opposed to the rudder pushing the boat around. The rudder will follow the boat if you use weight and trim to steer the boat. The more you can do with weight and trim, the less you use the rudder. The way the rudder works is it slows one side of the boat down so the other side can go by. Anything that slows the boat down is slow. So that's our first drill. We'll do that for probably half an hour, 45 minutes. And if it's too crowded, we might try and separate it into 2 spots, but I think we'll be able to do that in 1 spot. Watch out for traffic. Next, we're going to do upwind speed drill. So we'll just sail longer upwind leg, not tacking so much, but just sailing longer and working on sail trim. And coaches will be in chase boats or might even get aboard your boat and just work on sail trim and boat speed and balancing the helm, pointing well, a little bit, go upwind for 10 minutes alone, and then come back downwind. And then we're going to try and get pairs or triplets of boats to go together because we're all fast alone. But all of a sudden, when you have another boat nearby, then you have to get to work. And so you line up with another boat. There are a couple of ways to set this up. One way, just park near. We'll have a rendezvous mark. We might separate the fleets into a couple of different rendezvous spots. But you go back to the rendezvous mark, hang out there and luff, or heave to. How do you heave to? You have your main trimmed, your jib backwinded, and your rudder down, and the boat will just park. And you can wait that way. Don't luff your sails. Do not luff your sails to wait. Luffing your sails is, if you never luffed your sails and never exposed them to the sun, they would last forever. Don't luff your sails. Take good care of the sails that you have. They are not inexpensive, right? Your new sails, when you get a 3DI sail, it will be both the most expensive and least expensive racing sail you have ever purchased. It'll be more expensive than what you've bought in the past, and it will last so much longer that it will pay for itself. The guys who are going around the world, 27,000 miles, one mainsail. the way they broke a mainsail was first they broke a batten, had the batten poke a hole through the sail. Then they did 3,000 miles in 30 to 40 knots of wind. Then they tore the track off the mast with a crash jibe and had the batten poke a new hole, and then the sail started to tear a little bit. That's what it would take to hurt your sail. If you go 27,000 miles, then you can, after that, you can inspect it and get another one. But they last. Also, one thing about new sails, not just 3DI sails, but new materials, is compared to when I learned to sail, sail trim is easier. Because we used to spend about half our energy fighting stretch, and the other half of our energy trimming shape. And sails stretch so much less that we can devote much more of our attention to sail shape and a lot less to stretch fighting. So it's actually gotten easier as materials have gotten better. That's one of the reasons boats are faster. Sails don't distort. Anyhow, don't luff, heave to, wait for another boat. If both boats kind of go on a beam reach, half a boat length or boat length apart, and the boat and back, he'll go 3, 2, 1, trim, and you trim up and go. And you want to be more than a boat length apart and about bow to bow. So about a boat length and a half, boat length to 2 boat lengths apart, and even. And then you go upwind and you see how your trim is working. And if one boat's significantly faster or higher than the other, then they kind of keep things as they are, and the other boat starts to tinker. And we've sort of paired up the boats with comparable ratings and designs. You know, the 525s, they'll be pretty much against one design boats. But the mixed fleet boats, we've tried to pair them up as best we can. So we're going to do that with 2 or 3 boats at a time, working on speed. And then also the other thing you can do with that is you can count down and tack. Ready about? 5, 4, 3, and you tack, make a nice smooth turn, and just see whether you gain or lose distance relative to your competitor with the pace of your tack and your exit angle and your trim through your tack. Practice those. You'll be doing a lot of tacks and races. Want everyone to be 3 feet faster than it was last year. So we're going to do that for a while. And after we've done that, a couple of laps, you go back downwind, you can set your spinnaker. You can also, when you go downwind, actually talk to each other about what are your lead positions, how much backstay are you using, share the information. You and your tuning partner want to be the 2 fastest boats in your fleet and battle tactically for the regatta. That's your goal when you have a tuning partner. You want your tuning partner to prosper, because you won't prosper unless your tuning partner's fast. Next, we're going to do a ducking drill. You split tacks and then tack back at each other. The port tack boat ducks the starboard tack boat, sail out 30 seconds or so, tack back. Port tack boat ducks the starboard boat, and practice ducking. A good duck, like a good mark rounding, is done when you get here. That means you turned down and then came back up and were close hauled as you passed underneath the stern of the starboard tack boat. In the real world, when you do that, when you come back together later, you'll be ahead because they won't be able to cross you. A good duck is you're actually ahead when you pass behind somebody. It may appear otherwise that you're actually behind, but in fact you're ahead if you do a good job. It is not a trivial skill. You ease your main, you hike out, turn the boat down, and then come back up and be right close hauled there. And this is a moving target. To get good at this, you need to practice. From about a boat length away, you want to be aimed at where their shrouds are. As you come up, you're aiming at that spot, and they keep moving, and you go through there. Right? Don't come fixated on their shrouds. But also, you have to ease the main. In light air, you have to ease the main to be fast. And in heavy air, you have to ease the main to be able to turn. Right? There's the big rudder in the sky, and the little trim tab in the water. And the more you can steer your boat with your rudder in the sky, the less. Don't tell your helmsman that they're not driving the boat, okay? They've just got the trim tab. If you're really trimming great, the driver has very little to do. Send them to get the sandwiches, right? So you trim up the close haul. So that we're going to do that. Ducking drill is a fun thing to practice and a skill that you will use when you go racing. Another one we may or may not get to tomorrow is lee bow drill, where you come in and tack and lee bow. You tack on the leeward bow of the other boat to give them bad air. If you can't cross, you'll find when you try to lee bow, you get rolled. We'll talk more about that another time. Then we're going to sail upwind all while we have lunch. And then we're going to set our spinnakers. We'll talk more about this with your coaches. We'll talk about sail trim and spinnaker trim going downwind, good jibes and stuff, and how to do that. We'll talk a little bit about that in the morning. Then we're going to go on to some races. And I'm going to steal another minute or two from you about racing, because we're going to want to explain this now so we get it right. So we're going to have three sets of starts for 2 fleets, and we're going to have 6 starts all together. 6 starts all together. 3 for each group. 3 for each fleet. So the Santanas are going to start first. We're going to have what's going to turn out to be a 30-minute signal. That's the warning. And then at 25 minutes, we're going to do 4, 1, and 25 will be the go. 5, 2, 5, start 1. And that's going to be the 5 minutes for the PHRF fleet, is what we're going to call the others. Will start. So these guys will start at 25, and they'll sail for 30 seconds or a minute, and then tack away, and then or jibe away, just come back, and then the next group will start at the 20. Okay, and then they'll start, and then at the 15, the greens will start again. Right? And then at the 10, what's going to happen at the 10? These guys will have started, and then, right? The reds start again. And then 5. Who's going to start on the 5? Right? The greens will come back. They'll be starting. So you'll be starting every 10 minutes, alternating pairs. So it'll be the 5, 2, 5s and PHRF and 5, 2, 5 and PHRF. Do you know which fleet you're in? Okay. Any questions about that? So it's just going to be we're going to start the clock, set your watch for 30 minutes, and we'll be doing 5, 4, 1, go. 5, 4, 1. Every go is going to be the 5 for the next group. It's rolling starts. Questions about that? How many starts are there altogether in this drill? 6. How many starts will your boat sail? 3. Okay. Good job. Right, you got that? 6 altogether, 3 for each group. All right. All right, so we're going to do that. After we've done it for like that, we'll take a 5-minute water and a debrief break, and then we'll do it again, the exact same thing. 3 for each group again, same thing. Then we'll take another, then we're going to go racing. And every time we race, all weekend long, there will be a practice start. This is going to be a little different than what we just saw here. This was 3 alternating starts, right? We just did 3 alternating starts. Now we're going to go race.